All right, so one thing I want to do is I want to drag the actual desktop version of this over, and I haven't really done this yet, but notice how this is automatically being populated with the data that everything we've been doing to the online versions, because again, this file is open in the desktop version. We're actually doing it on the one online version of Excel, and it's actually the same file, and it's technically I'm sharing this file with myself. And by the way, one other thing that I want to point out to you, if I come over here and I want to go full screen on this for a moment, if you look under the home tab and look here at your auto sum button, notice how that looks pretty much exactly like the auto sum button in the online version of Excel. So again, there are a lot of similarities between the online version and the desktop version. But again, I want you to understand that if you were to do a certification exam, it would be on the desktop version and not the online version. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do, excuse me there, we want to go ahead and put in some more functions. We just finished with the sum function for number 5, which is function 5. And let me resize this again. And now let's take a look at this. And we want to work on function number 6. So I need to come up here and notice that function number 6, again in this document, it tells you that it's in the average column. So again, going forward, when I make new resources for my courses, I am going to try to use terminology and set these up that will mimic the certification exam as much as possible. So here we're looking for average. Now, if you'll notice over here in the text that I gave you, I use the word mean. And probably in 3rd or 4th grade, you learned that another word for the mean is average. And on a certification exam, you will be told to take a range of cells and to find the mean of those cells. And on the exam, they're going to expect for you to know that that is the average function. So if you'll notice that starts under here under column D, D14, which is right here. So I'm going to click there, and we're going to go, and I want to go full screen on this so you can see it. And again, I want to go back to that auto sum button, and I want to click on the arrow. Then notice here how we've got average. So I want to select average. Now, this is one of those cases where Excel does a pretty good job of guessing what the cells are that are in the range, but you do not want to include row 12 in this. So there's a couple of different ways that you could go about doing this, and for me, I just want to come down here and click to the right of D13 down here in that formula, and I just want to hit the backspace key, and I want to change that and make it say 12, because those are the only cells that we want to include in this formula. So we want to get the average, and again, notice the syntax of this. It's equal sign and then average, and then a left parenthesis. Then you've got your range of D4 to D12, and the first and the last cell of that range is separated by a colon, and then you've got a right parenthesis. So then all you got to do is to hit enter, and then you're going to get the number of 8169 to 27. So you get the point, but let's go take a look at that, and you'll see that this is $81.69, because later on we're going to format this as currency. So that is the right number, it's just not formatted yet. And then we want to drag, if you look here at the PDF again, we want to drag that formula all the way through the gain and loss column. So I want to drag this fill handle like we've done previously and go through column I. And we will worry about checking the rest of these numbers later and formatting these here shortly. But let's just hold off on formatting. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to put in formula number or function number 7, and function number 7 goes in the cells directly below the one we just did. And on this one, I did phrase this the way that, similar to the way it would be on the exam. You are looking for the highest number in a range of cells, the highest number in a range of cells. So now I don't know if you would learn this in 3rd grade math, but matter of fact, I'm pretty sure you didn't. This is one of those little things that's kind of unique to Excel. When you are looking for the highest number in a range of cells, now you might think that the function would be called highest, but it's actually not. Or it might say the largest number on a certification exam. But the function that you are looking for, again, if you come back over here, click in this cell where this function is going to go, and then again, you go to AutoSum and click the arrow. The function that returns the largest number is actually max. Okay, maximum. So if you click on that, now again, this is one of those circumstances where you may have to go through, and in this case, it only selected one cell, and we need to select again through row 12. So I'm going to come back up here. I want to put my mouse, I'm going to move my mouse to the arrow. The very tip of my arrow is in the middle of cell D4. Now I'm going to click, hold, and drag to select down through row 12. Now again, your mouse movement, your placement of the arrow and whatnot, that's crucial if you're going to use the mouse. Now again, remember, you could have come down here and you could have manually typed all this in, but I'm not doing that in these lessons. Okay, so it's equals max, left parenthesis, D4, colon, D11, right parenthesis. That is correct. That's what we're looking for. So when we hit enter, it returns 390.32. And in this case, you could easily look up here and see that the largest number from this range of cells is 390.32. So that is correct. And again, we want to click on this cell and we want to drag the fill handle to the right. And I should have done this previously, last step, just to make my point. But if you scroll down here, notice how it does indeed say 390.32. And again, none of these numbers are formatted correctly yet, and we'll do the formatting shortly. And then we want to come back here, and now we want to find the lowest number, or the smallest number of a range of cells in a range. So we want to click in this cell right here, and we're looking for the lowest. And again, we could come up here under the same AutoSum button and click the arrow and select, in this case, it's min. Now, I do want to point out something to you before I click min. First of all, the one that we're not going to do in this lesson is count numbers. These are probably your 5 most commonly used functions right here. But there are more functions that would be available to you if you came over here and clicked more functions. We're not doing that in this particular lesson. So we're going to come over here and click minimum. And again, this is one of those instances where you're going to have to select the range of cells. Now, you could just manually type in D4 to D12, or you can just click, hold, and drag. And again, you got to put the tip of the arrow in the middle of that cell to click, hold, and drag. And you see how that formula updates, or that function syntax, I should say. Then I want to hit the enter key. We get 1779. And then you could go look at the PDF over here on the 3rd page, 1779. So that number is correct. So then what you would want to do is drag this fill handle over through here, like we did previously. And that is it for all of the functions. And now we're going to start formatting everything. So in looking at this rubric, and I want to try to do this in order of the rubric, we're just going to go down and we want to take column B and we want to center this text horizontally, meaning equally between the left and the right. So what we want to do here is to come back to column B, and in this case we want to center everything that's in column B. So the easiest way to do this is to take your mouse and move it up here on this column B row heading. And if you actually click up here on column B, that box, it will select that entire column. Just like if you clicked on one of the row number headers over here, it would select an entire row. But we want to select this entire column by clicking on the column header. And then we want to come up here under the Home tab, and under the Alignment group, we want to click this Align Center button. And when I click that, you'll see how all of this text now moves so that it is in the center. Okay? So now I want to come over here. And by the way, there are other ways that we can do all this, but for this lesson, we're just going to stick with the easy methods. So next we need to format the numbers in column C as a short date. All right, so this is a little bit different. I know it says format the numbers as a short date, but you should be able to click on the column C heading, and then what it's going to do is to format any number as a short date. Now, if you look in cell C3, it says date purchased. Well, that's not a number, so it's not going to apply that formatting to this. But we want to format all of this as a short date. Now, let me just tell you how Excel handles the formatting of dates. Excel starts essentially with a beginning date of January the 1st, 1900, and assigns that the number 1. And then January the 2nd, 1900 would be assigned the day, or would be assigned the number 2. And it's pretty much, Excel will pretty much just go through and it adds 1 for every date. For every day, it'll add 1 starting on January 1st, 1900. So what we're going to do next is we're going to come over here, and we want to go under the Home tab and under this number group right here. And you have to click this arrow right here, and you select short date. And what it's going to do, it's going to take those numbers, and essentially it's going to count the number that you see in those cells. That's the number of days since January the 1st, 1900. And when you click short date, as I just did, it takes all of those cells and it formats them using a date format where it has the number, the month, followed by a slash for the date, followed by a slash for the year. Now, by the way, on the desktop version even, by the way, notice down here it says more number formats. If I were to click that, this is a whole lot more like what you would see on the desktop version of Excel, and obviously you could see it here, but you've got all of these other formats, the different ways that you can format a date. And again, we're not going to get into all of these unless you are doing a certification exam, and we'll get into that later on. But that's your short date format, and that has been completed now. So next, what we want to do is go and apply a conditional formatting on columns I and J. And the directions are that all cells containing money values, so basically we want to put a conditional formatting on cells that have money in it, so that numbers less than 0 use a light red field with dark red text. So let me show you what all that is. Conditional formatting is a feature in Microsoft Excel that looks for whatever value is in those cells, and if it meets a certain condition, it will format those cells a particular way. Again, but it has to meet the certain condition. So what we want to do is, it's columns, it's I and J. Now, by the way, not necessarily just money, but also percentages. So I just realized I probably need to update that rubric ever so slightly, because these cells over here will eventually have percentages in them. And basically, we just want negative numbers to be formatted differently. So what we want to do is we want to select all those cells, and you could select these empty cells, and if there's nothing in there, then those are equal to 0. Well, 0 is 0. It's not less than 0. We're only concerned with cells less than 0. So what you do is come up here under Conditional Formatting, and this is also under the Home tab. And what you want to do is you've got all these different cell rules. You've got the different ways that you can format cells. Again, I want to point out to you that you can highlight cell rules. You can use top and bottom rules, where if you want to highlight the top 10 items or the top 10% of items in a range or the bottom 10 or whatnot. You've got all these different options, but we're going to stick with this easy one right here. So we want to highlight all the cells that are less than, and we just want to type the number 0 in here. And you want to use light red fill with dark red text and click OK. And then what it's going to end up doing is, now here I get this message on my computer. You may not get that. I want to select maybe later. But down here, basically it just takes all of the negative numbers and it highlights them so that they have a dark red text with a light red, or just call it pink fill. And again, what I want to point out to you is this T-Mobile stock. If I were to go in and let's say that this T-Mobile stock was actually worth $26.02. If that changed, when I change this number and I hit enter, look what happens to these pink cells. Notice how the format goes away, because the format is based upon a condition being met. And the condition that we put in was less than 0. Well, in this case, the condition, it's greater than 0, so it no longer meets the condition. And so now you have to, it doesn't look like that. So I actually want to come up here and I want to click my undo button, because I really didn't want to do that. All right, so the next thing that we want to do, and by the way, just to make a point, let me drag this desktop version of this file over. Notice how it's automatically being populated, because this is currently being treated as a shared file. And again, there's not really much. Well, let me point this out real quick. Notice how the number group over here, this is actually called a dialog box launcher. And on the desktop version, you get this where if I click it, look what happens. And it's going to take a couple of seconds to open up. But this looks a whole lot like that dialog box that opened up that I showed you on the online version when you came down here and clicked more number formats. So again, there's no little button down here. There's no launcher right here. It's just there's a different way to get to it. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we've taken care of column I and J. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is in column J, we want to format those numbers as a percentage rounded to 2 decimals. So what we're going to do is to come over here, and I'm going to, again, you could just select these cells, but you could also do it like this, because again, you're formatting numbers as a percentage. So, the label of percent gain loss, that is not a number, so it won't be formatted. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You could come up here under the number group, and here is your percent button. So you can click on that percentage button, and you see how it takes those numbers and formats it as a percent. But it also said round it to 2 decimal places. So right here, these buttons, these are your increased decimal and decreased decimal. So if you hit the increased decimal button, in this case, if you hit it twice, it's going to take those numbers and it's going to round them all to 2 decimal places, which looks a whole lot more like what you would see in this PDF. And by the way, don't worry about on my PDF this not being pink. When you take a document and you create a PDF out of it, the formatting doesn't always carry over perfectly into a PDF. All right, so then the next thing that we do when we look at our rubric, it says row 1, cells are merged in center, have the fill color of choice. The font is visibly larger. Okay, so what we're going to do is the merge in center feature. The merge in center feature allows you to merge multiple cells into one cell and centers the text automatically. Now, this only works, first of all, to select these cells, you've got to take your mouse and move it so that the arrow is in the tip of the arrow is in the middle of a cell, the first cell, and then you just drag it. And by the way, I can drag it anywhere I want, but I just want to drag it through column J. And then right here is your merge in center button. It's under the home tab and under the alignment group. Now I actually want to click the arrow button because I want you to see the options that are there. You can merge and center the text, or you can just click merge these cells together and basically make it one big cell. The text would not move, it would stay where it's currently at. Or if you just wanted to merge the cells together into one big cell, and then again you got unmerged cells, which there's, in this case, they're not merged together. In order to unmerge them, you would have to merge them first. So what we want, merge in center. And down here, I haven't said anything to you about font size just yet, but down here it says as long as it's bigger than what's in rows 3 to 16. Well, now mine, I'm using 11. So up here, you might want to come up here and make this size, say, 18 or 24 or 36. And notice how when I changed that to size 36, how the row got bigger, because one of the things that Excel does is that if you put text into a cell and the row is not big enough to display that text, it will automatically resize it. So I resized that, and it also said to change the color. All right, so we want to change the fill color of this cell. And again, this is one really big cell at this point. So you want to come up here under the font group, and here is your fill color button. And try to keep it similar to the PDF version that you're looking at. We want to make it a shade of light blue, and I'm going to pick this one right here. Okay. So that is now done. And for row 2, we're going to do the same thing. Now, by the way, row 2, typically you would make row 2 a little bit smaller than the size that you made it in row 1. So we're going to do that. So we're going to select A2 through F2. And we're going to click Merge and Center. And if I made this one size 36, I want to make this size 24. And I do want to use the same color. And notice how that the fill color I just used previously is now the one that's the default color if I click on it. So I just want to click on that. All right, so that takes care of row 1 and row 2 on here. And then for row 3, it says use wrap text and is centered horizontally and contains a bottom border of choice. Okay, so let's take those one at a time. So first of all, we want to wrap the text. So basically what we want to be able to do is we want this text to be able to wrap so that the text flows on top of each other within a cell, kind of like what you see here, where the word date is on top of the word acquired in this cell, and initial is on top of price, which is on top of per share. So what we need to do first is we need to take this and we need to select these cells. And then over here under the Home tab, under the Alignment group, click Wrap Text. Now, here's the thing. It may look like that nothing happens. And the reason why that nothing happens is because as of right now, these columns are wide enough for all of the text that there's no need to wrap. Now, if you're doing this on the desktop version of Excel, it may actually take this text and wrap some of the cells, but maybe not all of them. So basically what you want to do is you want to start resizing these columns to make the text wrap. So I want to start with column D because basically, you know, you always want to have a little bit of white space between these so you can easily read them. But you want to come through here and take your mouse and move it so that your mouse, it becomes a pointing finger, and then up here on the column header between on the right border between D and E, you see what looks to be a double I-beam with arrows pointing in opposite directions. If you click, hold, and drag this back slowly to the left and then let go, what happens here is that now this row is so small that you can't see the text in row 3. So now what you need to do is to make row 3 bigger by doing the exact same thing. So if you want to make row 3 bigger, you would take your mouse and move it so that your hand and finger becomes, you move it down toward the bottom border and you just click, hold, and drag this down. And basically I want to double the row height and see if that's big enough, and it is. And so what I want to do is I want to move this back to the left just a little bit more. And you see how this text now, it says initial price per share. And if you look on the, now here's one of those things that I'll go ahead and tell you. On mine, again, remember over time I have changed this a little bit, and this is one of those deals where yours does not have to look exactly like mine, but it should be pretty close. Notice how I used on the PDF here, it uses the word date acquired, and then over here on the one I gave you it says date purchased. It really doesn't matter just as long as you know which is which. But here initial price and then per share are on separate lines, but here it's like this. For the time being, that's perfectly okay, so don't worry about that. But then you see how initial cost and current price per share, how these are formatted. Again, basically, you want to make sure that you see all of the numbers that are going to be in these cells. You're going to end up formatting all of those as accounting, which I think it's probably wise for me to just kind of jump ahead a little bit. And let's go ahead and get these numbers formatted. That way we'll know how to format these. So here on row 4 through 13, which is right below this one, we want to take these money values and format them as accounting. And then rows 5 through 12 do not contain a dollar sign. So what you need to do is we're going to come down here again, and I want to select all of these cells that has representatives of money in them. And this is one of those things where if you're doing it in the online version, it may or may not work exactly the way I'm thinking it's going to work, but I'm holding down my control button, which actually, you know what, I don't want to do that. I want to just come back and select just these cells, and I want to come up here under the now this button right here is the accounting number format, so we're going to click that. And we are in the United States, at least I am, and I want to click this, and I want to use the United States formatting using the dollar sign, US dollars. And by the way, notice down here you got the British pounds, you got the euro, you got the Chinese yen, but we're talking about American dollars. And what it does is it puts a number on these. And by the way, I just realized I went down to row 16 and I was only supposed to go down to row 13. And that's actually okay. We'll fix that here shortly. But I do want to point out what accounting format looks like. Under accounting format, the dollar sign is going to be at the far left-hand side of the cell, and it's going to be slightly indented, and then the numbers are slightly indented on the right side as well. And so you've got this gap between the dollar sign and the number itself. So the directions said to, I'm going to undo this real quick. I want to just select these cells. I hit the undo key, and I just want to go through and redo this. And again, select English United States. But here's one of those deals where the rubric says to do not include dollar signs on the rows 5 through 12. So what you have to do now is go through and select rows 5 through 12 individually. And here you have to go under, you can click the arrow next to the dollars, next to the accounting format, but then you have to come down here and click more accounting formats. And notice here it gives you a place for a symbol. So what you would have to do is to come over here and select none. And by the way, I just noticed this, that they have the symbol for Bitcoin on here, which is a new money format that I don't know a lot about, but I've saw something about it. But none is what we want. Now, when you do that though, notice how it's still formatted as accounting. But also notice how there's no dollar sign there, but then this is not aligned. So this may be something that I need to end up changing, but for the time being, I'm going to leave it as it is. Okay? So then we need to do the same thing over here for these cells. Now these cells right here contain dollar values. So we want to format all of these the same way. We want to format it using accounting, English United States. Now this is the first time that this has happened, and I'm actually glad to see this. Now y'all know these probably today as hashtags. Old people like me know these as pound signs. And in Excel, what these pound signs mean is that the contents of this cell is too wide for it to be displayed in this column in this cell because the cell is too narrow. So what you need to do is to make these columns wider. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this, and the way that I am used to doing it is, since all of these are selected still, is to come up here and to double click on any of these column borders, to double click on it. Now I'm used to being able to do that in the desktop version of Excel, and it does not work like that in the online version of Excel. So I'm actually going to have to click, hold, and drag these column borders a little bit wider to make them fit. Now you can see all the numbers. Just click, hold, and drag, make it a little bit wider until you can see all the numbers. And then I want to have to do it over here on column I as well. Make it a little bit wider. And by the way, again, I want y'all to understand that as you're doing this lesson, that you know, with Excel especially, and you know, even Word or PowerPoint, it's kind of hard to lay out directions and say to do these steps in this particular order, because a lot of times the things that you do to get from point A to point Z won't make much sense until you get to point Z. When you get to point Z, everything that you did in between will make a whole lot more sense. So now what we want to do is we want to come over here and select these cells again, rows 4 through 12, and again we want to take off that dollar sign. So we come back under the accounting format again and click more accounting formats. And again, we want to remove the symbol so that we have no symbol. And again, when you do that, it changes the alignment. And again, I may change the rubric on this by the time you watch it, and I may tell you to use currency. That way that all of these numbers align, because I know that one thing that your math teacher told you in about 3rd grade is that you need to have all your numbers align up at the decimal if a decimal is present, or have them align at the right. And since we have decimals in all these, we really want these to align at the decimal. So let me, we'll worry about that later on. Again, I'll probably change this rubric to read uh, formatted as currency. All right, so now what we want to do now we got these numbers formatted as accounting is we want to come back here and we want to come back and make column G more narrow. Remember, we wanted to use the wrap text feature, so I want to make this smaller so that the text wraps, and that the key is you still want to be able to see all of the numbers. And if you only do it on these two right here, I'm happy, because then this proves to me that you know how to wrap text. So this, that's one of those deals where yours doesn't necessarily have to look exactly like mine. Although I do think I'm going to make column G a little bit more narrow, and see if I can get the word lost. Or actually, this is perfect where I've got the word percent on one line and then gain lost is on another. And again, you just have to play with it. And that's about as narrow as we can make this column so that everything fits and that everything can be seen. So now if you were to go back and look at this rubric again for row 3, it also tells you to that it's centered horizontally and contains a bottom border of choice. So what you want to do is to come back and select these cells, and you want to hit the Align Center button that's under the alignment group, and now everything's centered. And then the next thing you want to do is to add a bottom border of choice. Now if you come over here under the font group, here's your border button. Then if you click the arrow right here, what you can do first of all is you want to change your border color to be whatever color that you want. Now I'm going to select a shade of dark blue, and then I'm going to come back up here and click on this button again, and then I want to select bottom border, which is this one right here. And notice again, if you take your mouse and you roll over and you wait for that screen tip to open up, you can see the border names, and I actually want to put a thick bottom border. And then when I click off of that, you're going to see that on row 3 that I've got a thick bottom border that is dark blue in shade. So now let's go back and look at some other things that are here. On rows 4 through 13, we've already done that. Row 13 has a top and double bottom border of style and color of choice. So now what we need to do is to go back and select the cells that are in row 13. And so we're going to come over here, and then we want to select these cells. Got to select them with your mouse. So I'm going to start right here. Got to make sure that the arrow tip is here in the middle of A13, and I'm going to drag across right here. And then I want to use the same border color which is the dark blue. And then I want to come up here and select top and double bottom border, which is this one right here. Now in accounting, a double bottom border, now you know from your 3rd grade math class that a line means this is the last number that we want to work with. Either we want to get a sum of these numbers, or we want to add, or we want to subtract these numbers, and it means the exact same thing in Excel. And what you want to do here is you want to also, in the accounting world, a double line means that these numbers have been verified to be accurate. So if I click off of this now you're going to see this top and double bottom border, which means that these numbers have been verified to be accurate. So we've done that on row 13, and then rows 14 through 16, we're going to format these as currency. And by default, a currency by default rounds to 2 decimals. So we want to select these cells right here. And we want to come up here and we need to click, in this case, we need to click the number format button and select currency. And again, by default, currency, the dollar sign is directly next to the numbers, and it rounds to 2 decimals. And negative numbers, by the default format, are displayed using a minus sign, and the text is red. And up here we use the accounting format, which the accounting format is it uses parentheses and red. It uses parentheses to indicate that a number is negative. Now it doesn't necessarily change the text to red. Remember, we put a conditional format on this cell. That's what makes this number take that appearance. So just to explain this, I can come back here and change this number and make it so that it no longer meets that condition. And then you see that this cell is now black. And so let's go ahead and this is the last thing we're going to do in this assignment. Let's go back and we're going to select all these cells again. We're going to select from D4 to I13, and we're going to change all of these to currency. So all of the numbers align at the decimal. And then we want to go back and select the cells that are in rows 5 through 12, and we want to remove that dollar sign. We want to remove the symbol. So on this one, we have to come back here and click More Number Formats. Because these were already formatted as currency, that's why it's selected as currency, but we want to under symbol. We want to change that to none. And again, notice how the different formats, you've got the different options of how you would want to format a negative number. Do you want it to use minus signs? Do you want to use parentheses? Do you want the negative numbers to be displayed in red? Which that kind of goes back to some old accounting terminology where you may have heard of companies that are in the red or in the black. If they're in the black, that means they're making money. If they're in the red, that means they're losing money. So that's where that term is coming from. So anyway, I just want to click OK. And now, if you were to look at this file and compare it to the PDF copy, the last page of the PDF, it looks a whole lot like my PDF. It may not be 100% like mine, but it's going to be very similar to mine. Okay? So, this first activity, very long. Very few activities will be this long, but at this point, I'm assuming that you know nothing, which is why the video is so long. So, that is it for this lesson. Because you saved this using Excel Online, all of these changes you made were automatically saved. So that is it for this activity. It's time to move on to the next one.